New Orleans Saints open their 2011 preseason against the San Francisco 49ers. Friday night, Superdome, 7 p.m. Ken Trahan, Lenny Vangilder of SportsNola.com. You can read our piece on 10 things to watch in the Saints preseason heading into the 2011 regular season. Bottom line is, Lenny, that this is a team that has a genuine chance to compete for the NFC Championship and return to a second Super Bowl in 3 years.
I don't think there's any question about it. There are a lot of things that have to happen for that, and some of those things we're going to start seeing here in the preseason. Obviously, the biggest factor is health. When this team is healthy and it's clicking on all cylinders and it's got the people that it wants to have on the field, they are as dangerous as any team in the NFL. So there are some guys that Sean Payton is going to be anxious to get back on the field this preseason. At some point, there's going to be probably a lot of guys that get held out of the 49ers game that he's going to want to see get back on the field at some point before the preseason ends and before 4 weeks from Thursday when the season opens against the Packers.
Things to watch: Drew Brees, his 11th year, healthy now, 22 picks last year, playing on a bad knee. He'll be better this year. Chase Daniel, this is a guy that the Saints really like. 3rd year now, knows the system, really impressive in the preseason last year, and a lot of people look at him as a young Drew Brees.
Well, exactly. They have a lot of things in common. And, here's the thing with Chase Daniel is that this time of year is when he's going to get his reps. You're not going to see, unless it's a 30-point game one way or the other, Chase Daniel in a game in the regular season, knock on wood, you're assuming that Drew Brees is healthy. This is his chance to kind of make his mark out there and be able to show what he can do. You know what Drew Brees can do. They're going to minimize his number of reps out there. He'll probably play 12 snaps Friday night, no more than, say, 18. It'll probably be a similar thing in week 2. Will go a little bit more in week 3 against the Raiders. And that's about it. You might not even see him in the final game of the preseason against Tennessee. So, this is Chase Daniel's time to shine. And they did not bring in a veteran quarterback in the offseason. They felt like this is their guy who, if something happens to Drew Brees, that they have enough confidence to go with Daniel.
Mark Ingram, of course, will see the ball in the preseason. Good chance he'll be the starter at the start of the regular season.
In my mind, the interesting thing about the whole running back situation is the health of Chris Ivory. I think it gives a guy like Jake Bell a chance to make this team coming out of camp. Ivory, in my mind, is a strong candidate to end up starting the season on the PUP list. He has not passed a physical as of this point. He's had coming off the foot surgery. Now he's just had the groin area surgery last week. So he's dealing with a lot of issues in terms of health, and honestly, he's had chronic issues in that regard. But when you start talking about Mark Ingram, Pierre Thomas, that is a terrific dynamic. And then you get to Darren Sproles, who is clearly going to be the third down back, the Reggie Bush type back on this team, who can really do a little bit more than what Reggie can.
Olin Kreutz, big pickup and improvement over Jonathan Goodwin. Of course, this also buys time for Matt Tennant, and re-signing Jermon Bushrod buys time for Charlie Brown. These are two guys to watch in the preseason as they continue to get their pedigree, to get experience, and to play themselves into this league.
Well, no doubt about it, and they will get their chances here. But clearly, as you look at things, the offensive line is a lot like the quarterback situation. You pretty much know what's going to happen there. If they carry 8 guys like they have in years past, you're looking at your 5 guys on the regulars being the starters with Bushrod and with Stinchcomb at tackle, with Nix and with Jari Evans at the guards. You're looking at Kreutz at center, and you're looking at Brown, Tennant, and Zach Strief being your backups. And that's pretty well set. The younger guys who might be in camp are camp bodies right now. You want to stay healthy. Stinchcomb is the oldest guy of that bunch outside of Kreutz, and he's probably got he's being held back a little bit because of some knee issues. Obviously, they want to make sure he's healthy when the bell rings in 4 weeks.
Jimmy Graham, a budding star. That's why they let Jeremy Shockey go. David Thomas back as a solid veteran presence at tight end. On the defensive side of the ball, up front, this should be a much improved team. Cam Jordan, of course, the #1 draft pick, figures to get a chance pretty early on, especially with Will Smith facing a possible suspension. Alex Brown figures strongly. But inside, that's where the real story is, when you bring in a couple of beefeaters, if you will, in Sean Rogers and Abreu Franklin, who give the Saints something they haven't had in a long time.
It's a different team. It really is in that regard. And clearly, I think Sean Payton and Greg Williams realized one of the things they needed to fortify in this offseason was their ability to stop the run. Obviously, in the middle with Jonathan Vilma at linebacker, they're very, very, very solid. The defensive tackles in front making, a disruptive presence up there, if you will, that's only going to make Vilma right behind them even better. And those guys can get in there. Franklin was as good a run stopper as there was in the NFL last year. The 49ers, who will be in here Friday night, were among the best defensive teams in the NFL against the run last year.
Outside linebacker remains a big question mark. Scott Shanley is still here and figures to still be here. Will Herring is here. Clint Ingram is here. Then there's Casillas. There's Dunbar. Guy who was listed as a starter on the strong side early in the week this week was Danny Clark, and they let him go a couple of days before this first preseason game. So that situation is still fluid.
No doubt. And what it's going to come down to in a lot of cases, making these decisions, obviously they're going to put the best guys on the field, but linebackers become in a lot of cases situational type players. The three guys that you see listed as starters might play 20-30% of the snaps at those true positions, because so much of what you do in the NFL is about situations on defense, playing nickel, playing dime, playing short yardage, to where you're going to have to account for that. And there are guys who will play the pass better. There are guys who will play the run better. But one thing is for certain, number 51 in the middle, Jonathan Vilma, is the anchor of that linebacking core.
And in the deep, Malcolm Jenkins, a budding star. Roman Harper, an adequate player, back as a starter. You've got Chris Reese and Pearson Prelo back behind them. Cornerback, an intriguing position. When healthy, I think we all agree the Saints are good enough at that position. But the key is when healthy. When you look at the number of games Tracy Porter and Jabari Greer have missed over the past couple of years, that has to concern you. And then, of course, the development of Patrick Robinson becomes keenly important. He's going to have to step up and play like a number one pick.
Yeah, I'm not going to profess to be an expert, but just listening to people who I trust talk, Patrick Robinson might be the most improved player on this football team, from year one to year two. And remember what happened this time last year. Malcolm Jenkins made that big jump from year one to year two as well. And hopefully Patrick Robinson does make that jump, and all that does is make this defense even better. You've got a rookie in Johnny Patrick. They've got some veterans that they've signed, among them Fabian Washington. This will be a deep group, but I agree with you. When you've got Greer and Porter healthy and on the field together, this is a very good team with a very good record when those two guys are on the field.
Last but not least, for fans looking for sleepers, realistically, we talked to a number of people, and I think you and I both agree, there are only really three free agents that have a sincere chance of sticking at the end of the preseason. They would be cornerback DeAndre McDaniel out of Clemson, also Jarrett Faison, the wide receiver, but he's been set back by an injury, and the aforementioned Jacque Bell. These are the three guys that clearly seem to have the best chances.
You would think with some of these guys, especially a Faison, you're going to have a hard time justifying carrying him unless he does something on special teams. But if he's a guy that you can get through on the practice squad, and one of the things that we found with this organization is a tremendous loyalty among the players. If you can get guys to want to stick with this organization, and somebody like a Faison, if he can be a practice squad type guy, get another year in this system and perhaps turn into something down the road, he could be somebody. McDaniel is certainly, he's at a position there where he can make an impact on special teams, and that's where he's clearly going to make this roster if he's going to make the 53 when we're talking about that in a little more than 3 weeks.
Follow Lenny and all of our writers who cover the Saints practices on a day-to-day basis here at sportsnola.com, and of course we'll have full game coverage of the first preseason game and all from here on out as well. I'm Ken Trahan along with Lenny Vangilder for sportsnola.com.